My name is Evelyn, and the night my parents kicked me out, no one raised their voice at first. That's the part people don't believe. It wasn't some dramatic screaming match you see in movies. It was quiet, polite, almost civilized, which somehow made it worse. We were sitting at the dinner table, the same table where I had eaten every Sunday meal since childhood. My mother had just finished clearing the plates. My father folded his napkin with slow, deliberate movements. My sister, Lauren, sat across from me, scrolling on her phone like nothing important was happening. Then my father said it. Lauren needs her own space now. I looked up, confused. Okay? My mother sighed like I was being difficult. She's going through a lot. She needs your room. Not a room. My room. I waited. Surely this was a joke, or a discussion, or at least a question. Instead, my father leaned back in his chair and said the sentence that rewired something in me forever. Evelyn, you're an adult. If you don't like it, go live in the streets. The words landed heavy, final, practiced. Lauren didn't even look up. She smiled at her screen. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask where I was supposed to go. That surprised them. My mother tilted her head. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. I had helped pay the mortgage when my father's business struggled. I bought groceries. I fixed things around the house. I stayed small so no one felt threatened. And now I was being evicted for convenience. I stood up quietly. My hands were steady, even though my chest felt hollow. I went to my room, the room that apparently wasn't mine anymore, and packed a single suitcase. Clothes, laptop, charger, nothing sentimental. I left the childhood photos on the wall, let them keep the version of me they preferred. When I walked past the dining room, my father didn't look up. You'll figure it out, he said. You always do. That was the problem. They knew I would survive. They just didn't care how. I walked out the front door with no plan and no destination. The porch light flicked off behind me, just like that. They never asked where I was going. They never asked if I was safe. And they definitely didn't ask what I actually did for a living. As I loaded my suitcase into my car, I realized something chillingly clear. They thought they had just broken me. What they didn't know was that I had been hiding my real life from them for years. And 3 weeks later, they were going to regret every word they said that night. I didn't drive far that first night. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly, so I pulled into a grocery store parking lot 3 miles from my parents' house and turned off the engine. The silence inside the car felt louder than the argument we never had. I sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, replaying my father's words. Go live in the streets. Like I was trash they could set out at the curb. I reclined the seat and wrapped my coat around myself. That was my bed for the night. No pillow, no blanket, just the hum of distant traffic and the realization that my family had chosen my sister's comfort over my existence. Lauren had always been the priority. She was the fragile one, the one who needed support, the one whose mistakes were called phases while mine were labeled failures. When she dropped out of college, they blamed stress. When I worked 2 jobs to pay off my loans, they called it overachieving. I was the reliable one, the backup plan, the daughter who could handle being sacrificed because I always landed on my feet. They were right about one thing. I did land, but not where they expected. The next morning, I showered at a gym I still had a membership to. I put on my best neutral face, the one I'd perfected over years of being overlooked, and drove to work like nothing had happened. No one there knew I was homeless. No one knew I'd slept in my car, and I kept it that way on purpose. You look thinner, he said. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm glad you came. I smiled politely. I've been busy. That wasn't a lie. The house looked the same, but it felt smaller, like I had outgrown it without realizing. Lauren's laughter echoed from the dining room, too loud, too practiced. She burst out when she saw me, arms wide. There she is. We were wondering if you'd actually show up. Wondering, or hoping I wouldn't. Lauren wore a new dress, expensive, my mother's taste. She twirled slightly, waiting for compliments. It's my birthday dinner, she said. You didn't forget, did you? I met her eyes, calm, steady. Of course not. We sat down. The table was full, but there was a subtle shift. No one asked where I was living. No one asked how I'd been. They talked around me, not to me, like I was a piece of furniture that had been moved and quietly returned. At one point, my mother leaned in and whispered, You know, If things are hard, you could always apologize. Apologize. For existing? For not disappearing quietly enough? I nodded. I'll keep that in mind. Lauren smirked. She thought she'd won. Halfway through dinner, my father cleared his throat. So, Evelyn, he said, finally addressing me directly, what are you doing now? Still freelancing? There it was, the smallness they needed me to occupy. I took a sip of wine and let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. I don't freelance, I said. I own. Forks paused midair. Lauren laughed awkwardly. Own what? I smiled, slowly this time. My time, my work, my life. My mother frowned. What does that mean? It means, I replied evenly, I'm doing very well. They exchanged looks, doubt, confusion, mild irritation, because in their world, I wasn't allowed to be doing well without them. The dinner continued, but the energy had changed. My father watched me more closely. My mother asked careful questions. Lauren grew quieter. They sensed something, but they didn't yet understand what. When dessert was served, my phone buzzed on the table. A notification. I didn't hide it. I didn't rush to silence it. I simply glanced down and saw my father's face fall when he read the name reflected faintly on the screen. That was the moment he realized. The daughter they kicked out wasn't struggling. She was ascending, and they were no longer part of the picture. After dinner, my mother insisted I stay for coffee. That alone told me everything had shifted. She poured it herself this time, hands slightly unsteady, cup rattling against the saucer. Lauren sat stiffly on the couch, scrolling without actually looking at her phone. My father leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying me like a problem he hadn't prepared for. No one mentioned the notification, but it sat between us like a loaded weapon. So, my mother said too casually, where are you staying these days? There it was. Not concern. Inventory. I met her gaze. Downtown. My father raised an eyebrow. Downtown is expensive. Yes, I agreed. It is. Lauren scoffed. With what money? The room went quiet. My mother shot her a warning look, but it was too late. The question had been asked. I didn't answer right away. I wanted them to feel it. That discomfort. That creeping realization that they didn't know me at all. I never stopped working, I said finally. I just stopped explaining myself. My father straightened. You make it sound like we held you back. I smiled softly. You did. The word landed harder than any accusation. My mother's voice sharpened. After everything we've done for you? I nodded. Exactly. Lauren stood up. This is ridiculous. She's bluffing. Evelyn always exaggerates. I turned to her. You're right. I usually stay quiet. Her smirk widened until I continued. But not tonight. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and placed it on the coffee table between us. An open email. A logo my father recognized instantly. His breath caught. That can't be, he started. Because here's what my parents never understood. I didn't talk about my job because they never asked. They assumed I was barely scraping by, because that version of me made them feel superior. I let them believe it. For the next 3 weeks, I lived quietly. I rented a short-term furnished studio under a different last name. I answered emails. I closed deals. I took calls in parking garages and elevators and smiled through it all. Every night my phone stayed silent. No apology, no concern, no, are you okay? Just proof that my absence made their lives easier. And that hurt more than being told to leave. But it also clarified something. They hadn't kicked me out because they hated me. They kicked me out because they thought I was disposable. 3 weeks later, that assumption was about to cost them everything. Because while they were rearranging furniture and posting happy family photos online, I was preparing to step back into their lives as someone they no longer controlled. And when they finally realized who I really was, it was already too late. 3 weeks passed. Not a single message from my parents. No, are you safe? No, do you need help? No guilt. No regret. That silence told me everything I needed to know. They weren't worried about me. They were relieved. Relieved that the extra chair at the table was gone. Relieved that Lauren had her room, her space, her spotlight back. Relieved they no longer had to pretend they cared about the daughter who reminded them of responsibility instead of pride. And I let them have that illusion. During the day, I kept my routine sharp and invisible. Coffee at the same place every morning, laptop open, headphones in. To anyone watching, I looked like a woman barely holding things together. That's exactly how my parents always pictured me. What they didn't see were the calls I took behind closed doors, the wire transfers, the contracts finalized with digital signatures and quiet congratulations. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. Success is loud only when you need approval. I didn't. Lauren, on the other hand, made sure everyone knew how well she was doing. She posted photos of her new room, the fresh paint, the upgraded furniture. The caption read, "Finally feeling at peace again." My mother commented with heart emojis. My father liked the post within minutes. I stared at my phone longer than I should have. That room had been mine for over a decade, and now it was a prop. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed in my small studio and asked myself a question I had avoided my entire life. Why did I keep trying to earn love from people who only valued me when I was useful? The answer was uncomfortable, because leaving meant admitting I had never belonged. The next morning, my phone finally rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message like nothing had happened. "Hi, Evelyn. Just checking in. Your sister's birthday is coming up. We're having dinner Sunday. You should come." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "We were wrong." Just an invitation, on their terms. I replayed the voicemail twice. Not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to remember the sound of certainty in her voice. They still believed I was the same Evelyn, the quiet one, the forgiving one, the one who would show up and pretend nothing hurt. I smiled for the first time in weeks, because I was going to accept the invitation, and when I walked back into that house, they weren't going to recognize the woman standing in front of them. They thought they were inviting back a daughter who had nowhere else to go. They had no idea they were opening the door to someone who no longer needed them at all. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to see who noticed. My father opened the door with the same flat expression he'd worn the night he told me to go live in the streets. His eyes flicked over me quickly, assessing. No hug, no apology. Just a curt nod, like I was a distant relative who had overstayed her welcome years ago. "It is," I said. "And before you ask, no, I don't need your help. I never did." My mother sat down heavily. "Evelyn, why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Because every time I tried to grow," I said calmly, "you reminded me to stay small." Silence swallowed the room. Lauren's voice cracked. "You think you're better than us now?" I shook my head. "No, I just finally see myself clearly." I stood and picked up my bag. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. At the door, I paused. "You kicked me out because you thought I had nowhere to go," I said. "That was your mistake." As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed again. Another confirmation, another reminder. 3 weeks ago, they told me to live in the streets. Tonight, they realized I had built an entire world without them, and they were standing on the outside, looking in. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in years, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying since childhood. I slept deeply for the first time since they kicked me out. But families like mine don't let go that easily. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:12 a.m. My father. He had never called me before 9 in his life. I let it ring. Then he texted, "We need to talk, privately. Not please, not, I'm sorry." A summons. I didn't reply. An hour later, my mother tried. Voicemail this time. Her voice was softer than usual, almost careful. "Evelyn, your father didn't mean what he said. We're just concerned. Call us back." Concerned, now that the power balance had shifted. By noon, Lauren joined in. Her message was short and sharp. "You embarrassed us last night." I laughed out loud. That told me everything. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because they were afraid of what I represented now, proof that their version of the family story was false. That afternoon, I got an email from a familiar domain. My father's lawyer. Subject line, family property discussion. I stared at the screen, heart steady, mind clear. So this was the new tactic. Not reconciliation, negotiation. They wanted control back. I forwarded the email to my own attorney without replying. That evening, I sat by the window of my apartment, city lights glowing below, and thought about the little girl I used to be. The one who believed love was something you earned by being useful, quiet, agreeable. I wished I could tell her something. You don't have to stay where you're tolerated. The next day, I finally sent one message, one sentence. I'm not interested in revisiting the past. Please respect my boundaries. 3 minutes later, my father replied, After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? There it was. The guilt, the leverage, the same old script. I didn't respond, because this time, silence wasn't weakness. It was power. And the more I held it, the more desperate they became. They thought they could pull me back into the old role. They didn't realize I had already walked away for good. And when they finally understood that I wasn't coming back, that's when things were going to get ugly. The knock came 3 days later. Not a call, not a text. A knock. I looked through the peephole and felt something close to amusement settle in my chest. My parents stood in the hallway, together. That alone told me they were scared. My mother clutched her purse like a shield. My father stood stiffly beside her, jaw set, eyes already scanning the doorframe, the hallway, the quiet luxury of the building. He was taking inventory again, trying to calculate where he stood. I opened the door halfway. Yes? My mother exhaled sharply. Evelyn, thank God. We were worried. Worried enough to show up uninvited. I didn't step aside. My father cleared his throat. We need to talk. I tilted my head. About what? He hesitated. That was new. About misunderstandings, he said finally. About the way things were handled. Handled. Like I was a problem that had been misfiled. I already said everything I needed to say, I replied calmly. My mother's voice cracked. We didn't know you were doing so well. There it was. The truth at last. Not we're sorry. Not we hurt you. Just shock that I had survived without them. I looked past them, down the hallway, then back again. That doesn't change what happened. My father's tone hardened. You're being unreasonable. I smiled faintly. I learned that from you. Lauren's voice echoed suddenly from behind them. She had been standing farther down the hall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. So this is it? She snapped. You think you're better than us now because you got lucky? Lucky. Years of silence, years of restraint, years of being underestimated. I met her gaze. No, I think I'm done being less. My father stepped forward. This family doesn't abandon each other. I laughed quietly. I couldn't help it. You abandoned me first, I said. You just didn't think I'd notice. Silence fell thick and awkward. My mother's eyes darted around, as if the walls themselves might judge her. We can fix this, she said quickly. Come home. We'll talk. We'll make space. Make space, like I was furniture again. I shook my head. You already made your choice. I reached for the door. My father's voice rose. You're making a mistake. I paused, hand on the handle, and looked back at him one last time. No, I said softly. I already survived yours. I closed the door, and on the other side of it, for the first time, they were the ones left standing in the hallway, confused, powerless, and finally understanding what it felt like to be shut out. They had spent my whole life believing I would always come back. That was the moment they realized I never would. I thought closing that door would end it. But when people lose control over you, they don't walk away quietly. They rewrite history. The next week, I started hearing things. A mutual aunt texted me first. Your parents are worried sick. They say you're cutting them off for no reason. No reason. A former neighbor messaged on Facebook. Your mom says you're going through some kind of breakdown. Is everything okay? A breakdown. Then came the one that almost made me angry enough to respond. Your father said you left because you're ashamed you failed. I stared at my phone, feeling something cold and steady settle in my chest. So that was the narrative now. I wasn't kicked out. I wasn't discarded. I ran away because I couldn't handle life. They needed that story. Because the truth, that they had thrown out a capable daughter and lost control of her, was unbearable. For the first time, I considered setting the record straight, posting screenshots, telling everyone exactly what was said that night, exposing how easily they chose Lauren over me. But I didn't. Because here's what I finally understood. People who believe lies about you without asking don't deserve the truth. Instead, I focused on my life. I signed a lease on a larger place, floor-to-ceiling windows, quiet, mine. I upgraded my furniture slowly, intentionally. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." Just comfort, stability, peace. And then something unexpected happened. My father's name crossed my desk. A deal, a review request, a situation where my approval mattered. I sat back in my chair, reading it twice, pulse calm. The irony was almost poetic. He had spent my entire life reminding me that I needed him. Now the tables had turned, and he didn't even realize it yet. That night, my mother called again. This time, her voice was trembling. "Evelyn, your father may need your help." I closed my eyes. There it was. Not love, not regret. Need. I didn't answer right away, because for the first time, I wasn't deciding how to survive them. I was deciding whether they deserved access to me at all. And the choice I was about to make was going to change the balance forever.